most of the people here have been able to participate in one of the 2 previous summer sessions we had. If you weren't able to participate in those summer sessions, we did put them up on our YouTube page, which you can find on our website, which maybe Sabrina or somebody can type into the chat. So my name is Clint. For those people who don't know, my name is Clint. I'm the president of Californians Advancing Civic Education. We're a nonprofit organization that's been around for about a decade, and it is designed to help students like you participate in civic education programs. And we've been helping out We the People students primarily. We the People, I'm a We the People alum from Amador Valley High School back in 1995. Many of the people who are working on this in CACE are also alums, but some are not. In my day job, I'm a Deputy Attorney General for the state of California. I work in the government division, which means that I get to do constitutional law, like, as a job. So that's a lot of fun. And I would definitely not be there if it were not for the We the People program. We have a few CACE volunteers here. I would love for them to introduce themselves, tell them a little bit about, or tell everybody here a little bit about yourself. So I see Sabrina is first on my list, so.
Hi everyone, I'm Sabrina McGraw, the one on the video you just watched, except I chopped off all my hair. Same person though. I am one of the vice presidents of Californians Advancing Civic Education. I am an alum of the program from 2013 at Amador. I was on Unit 5. I just graduated from Berkeley Law School and will be starting a federal judicial clerkship in Las Vegas for the coming year. And I'm very jealous of Clint's job, and I want it in the future.
I am jealous of your clerkship.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay. Lizanne? You're on mute.
I forgot I had to unmute both. I had my phone and then the computer. I swear I've done this before. My name is Lizanne Cison. I am a managing director for enterprise risk management with a company called Gallagher. So I do risk management consulting primarily for public entities like universities, state, local government agencies. I am not a lawyer, but I was an alumni of the program. And I also, this program specifically prepares you no matter what kind of career path you're going for. It teaches you how to analyze problems. It teaches you to communicate effectively. It teaches you to work as a team. And so whether you choose to pursue law or not, it's a really valuable program, and happy to be here. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Sean, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning. My name is Sean Gentry. I am an alum of the program from the year 2002. I was a Unit 1 student at Foothill. Loved it. It was a great experience for me. I'm still, like, my 2 best friends in the world are my former Unit 1 mates. Not including my family, but this program's great. I can't speak highly enough about it. But nowadays, I'm an attorney. I'm a civil litigator and employment attorney in downtown San Francisco for a small law firm called Ad Astra Law Group. And I help employers navigate the complex HR laws in California. And then when there are legal disputes, I help resolve them either in court or in arbitration or many times out of court. So again, Sean Gentry. Nice to meet you.
Katie, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Keeshan. I'm also an alum of the program from 2016. I was a Unit 6 person. After that, went to UC Santa Cruz, which I graduated last year. And now I work as a field representative and caseworker for Assemblymember Bauer Cahan.
Great. What high school did you go to?
I went to San Ramon Valley High School, which doesn't have the program anymore, but it's cool to see all you guys. It's really fun to volunteer with CACE. So you guys are in a great program.
Great. Okay. So what we're going to be doing today is a little bit different from what we've done in the past 2 sessions. For folks who have participated in some of the past 2 sessions, we focused on some other things. In our first session, we had a really nice talk from the director of the Center for Civic Education, which runs We the People. And then we talked a bit about checks and balances. And me and Sean Gentry and Beck Mankowski, who's not here, had a nice little debate about which was the most important branch. And we talked about the We the People program in general. Last session, we focused on individual rights and the common good. So sort of philosophical questions that are gonna kind of permeate throughout your time in the We the People program. And we also talked some more about the kind of brass tacks of what We the People work looks like and what it looks like to participate and to compete in We the People this year. We talked about judging and how judges make their scores. And last time we went through the score sheet, and we had, I think Daniel talked at some length about 3 of the 6 categories that you're going to be judged on at your competition. And he talked about understanding, evidence, and what's the other one? I'm blanking on the other one.
Constitutional application, maybe?
There you go. Thank you, Lisanne. And constitutional application. This time, we are going to be talking about the other 3 and going a little bit in depth about the other 3 categories. Then we're going to watch, just as we had in the last 2 sessions, we're going to have a great alumni panel do a presentation just to demonstrate to all of your students what a panel of really excellent students looks like doing the We the People program. Then we're going to do sort of a debrief on that discussion, and then we're going to be breaking up into some smaller groups so we can have some smaller discussions about We the People in general. We've got a lot of alumni here that are going to be able to talk about maybe their experience with We the People, things that they might have liked to do differently, things that they liked best, things that, tips and tricks that worked for them. So that's going to be sort of the second hour of this session. And then the last part of this session is we are going to put all of you here into units. You're going to be mixed up into units. It's going to be assigned at random. So it's going to be some people from your school who you know, some people from other schools who you don't. There's going to be about 4, maybe 3 or 4 people in each unit. And you're going to have to write a presentation on the following question. You're going to have to write about a 2 to 3 minute presentation on the following question. The following question is, what is the most important right in the Bill of Rights and why? And then you're going to have to present it as a panel and do a follow-up Q&A. We have, like I said, we have a lot of volunteers here. They're going to be running that presentation. They're going to be judging you on how well you do. And then, it'll be a way for everybody to practice We the People before We the People has even really started. And then afterwards, we're going to vote on what is the most important right, and then that will be it. So I think everybody should have, I sent it out in the email, a link to the materials for this session. It also has all the materials for the previous sessions, but if you're looking for information on what the score sheet looks like, you should be able to pull up a score sheet in that Google Drive. So with that, I will kick it over to Lisanne, who is going to talk a little bit more about the other 3 categories of We the People judging. And there's really nobody better to talk about this because Lisanne has judged for a longer time than anybody in CACE at higher levels. She has judged at literally every level of this competition, including nationals multiple times. So she is fantastic in that regard.
Aw, thanks, Clint. Yeah, so that was a really nice way of saying I'm old, in addition to being experienced. But yeah, I've been judging at multiple levels of We the People for almost 18 years. I think this will be my 19th year judging. So I've seen a lot of different schools, a lot of different approaches, a lot of different formats, but there are definitely some themes that seem to work better, and definitely things that your panel of judges will be looking for specifically. And so the three that I want to talk to you about today are, first of all, responsiveness. The second is going to be talking about evidence, and then the third is going to be talking about participation. So when we talk about responsiveness, right, so you folks have the scoring criteria descriptions, but if I'm going to talk about those in a little bit more detail, what I really want you to make sure to do is make sure that you not only fully address the main question, but also the sub-questions. And so, for example, if we look at the district hearing questions for Unit 1, you know, that top #1 question of how did both classical Republicans and the natural rights philosophers influence the founders' views about government? And then there's two sub-questions under that. What are the essential differences between classical Republicanism and natural rights philosophy? Why do both and then the second one is, why do both classical Republicans and natural rights philosophers stress the need for education and preparation for citizenship? So in order for you to be viewed as responsive by your panel of judges, not only do you have to address the first question, but you also need to clearly be able to answer all the sub-questions for your presentation. One of the things that we look for is something called signposting. So the easier that you can make it for your judges to be able to determine that you actually did answer that question, the better. The easier that you can make it, say, first we're going to answer this one, then that, perfect. You have to understand that your judges may be seeing up to 10 different schools in the same day. So that's a way to stand out and make sure that they clearly remember that you answered all the questions. When you answer the question, keep in mind that it's not necessarily a requirement that you have to go one way or the other. You don't have to say yes in all cases or no in all cases. You can sometimes present two different sides and then come to a conclusion. And that's something that can actually be highlighted quite well too, because it demonstrates that you considered both sides of the question before coming to a conclusion. Just make sure that you do it in a clear and succinct way. In addition to making sure that you're responsive to the question that's being asked in the testimony portion, it's equally important, if not more so, that you're responsive to the question that's asked during the Q&A after your testimony, right? So if a judge asks you, a specific question related to, it could even be a question not even related to the question that you testimony. If you said something in your testimony that raises into a different question, you need to be prepared to be able to respond to that. And so make sure that you are asking both or answering both of those sections. You could have the most eloquent response possible. If it doesn't address the basic questions, you're going to lose points in that particular area. So in general, that's responsiveness. You need to be able to answer specifically the question that's asked. When you're in your Q&A, make sure that you answer the question and then say, yes, I agree, no, I disagree, and give specific evidence, and that's going to lead me into the evidence portion of the question. But you have to make sure that you are answering the question. And if you kind of get lost during your response, the last person that goes, it can really help to say, and this is why we answered your question. So to bring it all back, the reason that we believe X is Y. So that's a nice way to tie it back to the question. That will end on a strong note. For supporting evidence, right? So this is making sure that this is a way that we use to be able to test your applicability, because it's one thing to be able to remember what the Constitution says or what the case law says. It's another thing entirely to be able to use that evidence in a way that's specific to the question that's being asked and is answering the particular issue. So we are looking for a range of supporting evidence. We don't want to just see just constitutional application or just natural rights philosophy, or historical context. We are looking for a range of examples that demonstrates that you can apply reasoning and supporting evidence to it. So we know that we covered reasoning last time, and reasoning and supporting evidence aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. right? You need to be able to use your supporting evidence in a way that illustrates that you can reason through and make a point using that evidence. But we're looking for constitutional examples. We're looking for case law examples. And if you drop a Supreme Court case, it helps to not only name the case, but also talk about why it's relevant. So there's a big pet peeve among judges of what we call name dropping, right? So you can't just drop a case and then assume that everybody knows what the case is and why it's relevant or how you're applying that to answering a specific question. We want to make sure that even if it's a small subheading, it's like this case established this, you need to be able to say that. You can't just drop the case and then assume that that checks the box for evidence, right? So you need to apply the evidence in a specific way and explain why it's relevant. We're looking for historical examples, because the way that the Constitution has evolved over time, it was established in historical times for a reason within a certain context, but being able to translate that to current events with current applications, given that our context in some ways has changed, that can also strengthen the type of evidence that you provide. So hopefully that part makes sense. Lastly, with participation, right? So participation can be easier if you have a smaller unit, but if you have like a 5 or a 6 person panel, it can sometimes be difficult to make sure that each member of your panel participates. And if you have 2 folks on your panel that are really dominating the discussion, you need to be mindful of that as you're going through your Q&A. So if you have answered 2 or 3 questions and one of your panel mates has not had the opportunity to do that, I highly recommend counting to like 5, using the word Mississippi in between or hippopotamus, whatever you want to do. But make sure that you are mindfully giving your panel mates an opportunity to provide their perspective. You also need to be able to balance that with making sure that your participation is relevant to the question that's being asked. So you can't just hop in to try to get 30 seconds of airtime. You need to come in to be able to make an additional point to the question that's being asked. So the goal is to make sure that the way that the scoring criteria works is that most panel members participate. And yes, it is to the extent that most, but if you have 1 or 2 panel mates that can only get in on 1 or 2 responses, you're likely going to lose points. So just be mindful of that. So hopefully that is helpful in helping understand what we're looking for from a responsiveness, evidence, and participation standpoint. And I'm going to turn it back over to Clint in case I missed anything or to move on to the next part of the agenda.
No, I think that's great. Thank you very much. I would just add, with regard to participation, that's the one thing that I think everybody needs to focus on today. That's what we're looking for folks who are going to be split up into units, is for you to use the time wisely. And you're going to be not just helping to prepare the testimony that you're going to be preparing, helping to write it, you're going to be presenting it, but in the Q&A, get in there. This is a free opportunity for you to practice with the people, but also feel free to make some mistakes. Doesn't matter. This is like, you're not going to be judged on this. So use that time to do your best and get in there as much as you can. So I think that's what we have now. Let me look at the agenda. I think that we're getting close to, the alumni panel. Let's see. But before we kick over to the alumni panel, does anybody have any questions about anything that Lizanne or I just said? You can type it in the chat, or you can just pipe up. Okay. All right, great. So we're going to now go to the alumni panel. That means everybody's going to go to the gallery view and then hide your, or turn off your camera and hide everybody else. What's going to happen is we have an alumni panel of presenters, as well as an alumni panel of judges. The judges are going to introduce themselves, tell everybody where they went to school, what unit they were in, where they're going, what they're planning on doing next year. Then they're going to give the presenting panel an opportunity to introduce themselves in the same way. Then one of the judges is going to read the question, and then the students are going to present. The testimony is going to be about 4 minutes. The Q&A should be about 8 minutes. I'm going to need one of the judges to time if that's possible. Kira is raising her hand, I see. Okay, great. Okay, so everybody want to flip into gallery view, and I'm gonna stop video.
If you're not on panel or judge, could you turn off video, please?
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm one of your judges, Kira Thorson. I was Unit 4 last year at Foothill High School, the best unit, undeniably. And I will be attending American University in the fall. However, it will be from my bedroom.
Hey guys, my name is Vaishya Koda. I was also in Unit 4 at Foothill High School last year. And I will be attending UC Berkeley in the fall, but again, from my bedroom.
Hi, I'm Jennifer May. I was on Amador Valley's Unit 3 last year, and I will be attending UCLA in the fall.
You're muted, Rama.
Rama, you're muted.
Muted.
Sorry. I don't know how to use this, and I've used it many times. Hi, I'm Rama Narayanan, and I was part of Unit 5 last year at Amador Valley High School, and I'll be going to the University of Chicago in the fall.
Hi, my name's Gloria Xie. I'm going to be on the alumni panel presenting testimony today. I'm Amador Unit 3 from last year, and I will be heading to UC San Diego in the fall.
I'm Ayush Singh. I'm also on the alumni panel. I was Amador Unit 5 last year, and I'm going to UC Berkeley in the fall.
Hi, my name is Krishna Prakash. I'm also on the alumni panel. I was on Amador's Unit 6 last year, and I will be going to Northeastern in the fall, but remotely.
Hello, my name is Audrey Im. I'm also on the alumni panel. I was Foothill Unit 4 last year, and I'll be going to UCLA in the fall from my bedroom. We would like to thank the judges and the audience for being here today.
You may begin when ready.
Want to read the question, Kira?
I don't have it.
Oh, I got you. Some scholars say that Chief Justice John Marshall's opinion in Marbury v. Madison 1803 established the power of judicial review. Others say that the framers intended the judiciary to have that power from the outset. Which position do you agree with and why? What evidence can you cite for your positions? What are some ways that judicial review has been used to affect constitutional change? You may begin when ready.
The nature of injustice is that we may not always see it in our own times. Justice Anthony Kennedy's majority opinion in Obergefell v. Hodges 2015 illustrates the rationale for judicial review, the practice through which the courts can interpret and strike down laws that conflict with the Constitution. Indeed, the empowerment of the courts to protect the constitutional rights of the people by upholding or striking down legislation has both withstood the test of time and been supported by the framers long before Marbury v. Madison of 1803.
The concept of judicial review dates back to the colonial era. According to former Columbia law professor Julius Goebel, in the early 19th century, our judicial process was influenced by the British Privy Council, which had the ability to review the validity of legislation under colonial charters. However, due to the commonplace sentiment of a weak central government, judges were hesitant to strike down laws. Therefore, while the framers intended for the judiciary to wield the power of judicial review from the outset, it was only fully exercised after the Marbury decision. The case then did not establish judicial review, but rather furthered our understanding of how the Supreme Court could void legislation in practice.
The framers' intention for judicial review can also be seen in the founding era. As Alexander Hamilton explains in Federalist 78, the concept of judicial review exists as the interpretation of laws as a proper and peculiar province of the courts. As such, prominent framers believed that it was the duty of the judiciary to determine the constitutionality of law. Similarly, in the 1796 case Hilton v. United States, the Supreme Court used judicial review to conclude that a carriage tax did not violate the Constitution. Judicial review has existed long before Marbury, even within the court itself.
While some opponents of this view point to the phrase judicial review never explicitly being stated within the Constitution, it is still widely considered to have legal basis from the text. UC San Diego professor Sai Krishna Prakash argued in their 2003 paper that the power given to justices and extended to, quote, all cases under the Constitution and laws of the United States under Article 3, Sections 1 and 2, grants justices the ability to exercise judicial review. With this wording, our Constitution emphasizes both the importance of legislative sovereignty and the existence of judicial power.
Judicial review has been integral to enacting constitutional change, protecting historically disadvantaged groups, because the political process doesn't incentivize protecting minorities. In the 1954 case Brown v. Board of Education, the Supreme Court struck down the doctrine of separate but equal schools and ordered the desegregation of public education in our country. Without the court, Southern state legislatures would likely have sought to keep segregation legal for decades, but by applying the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, the judiciary was uniquely able to rectify a perverse and unjust practice.
Sometimes our political process even constricts the rights of the majority. A textbook example of this is the reapportionment of legislative districts. In the 20th century, state legislatures used purposefully antiquated election maps, leaving far more populous urban districts with far less power than their rural counterparts. Seeking to end this practice in Baker v. Carr, 1962, the court ruled that redistricting was a justiciable issue, ultimately resulting in states having to redraw their districts. Judicial review is thus integral to our democracy. Because state legislatures sought to do everything they could to keep their power, only the judiciary could enshrine the idea of one person, one vote into our Constitution.
Judicial review has been a hallmark of our nation's jurisprudence since our founding. Envisioned by our framers since the very beginning, the doctrine has enshrined some of our country's highest ideals into law. By enabling the protection of unpopular minorities, judicial review has helped ensure that we remain a free society. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So you guys were talking about the framers' original views on the powers of the judiciary. The framers also agreed that checks and balances were a really important part of how our three branches of government would interact with each other. Are there any checks that the other two branches can place onto the judiciary, and how have we seen those executed in our modern history, or in American history?
Absolutely. The Constitution in Article 5 outlines the amendment process, through which a 3/4 vote of Congress and then the state legislatures allows ratification of an amendment to go through. Probably the most famous example of this is the 13th Amendment, which overturned the Supreme Court's decision in Dred Scott v. Stanford of 1857. So the framers were aware of the power of checks and balances and the necessity of having them.
Yeah, another example is that while the Supreme Court does have the power to interpret and potentially strike down pieces of legislation, the legislature still has the ability to create new legislation that counteracts this decision. We have seen this happen with the case Shelby County v. Holder 2013, in which the court struck down the idea of pre-clearance, or a more strict process of deciding voter guidelines. In 2019, the House of Representatives proposed a new bill that would re-establish pre-clearance. So in this way, we can see the legislature trying to counteract the actions of the court.
Furthermore, the Supreme Court doesn't necessarily have to listen to majoritarian opinions that are held by the public. In Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2 of the Constitution, however, democracy is still maintained within the judiciary as the democratically elected president can appoint SCOTUS judges, and they are also confirmed then by a democratically elected Senate.
However, there is one way that lower courts, namely state Supreme Courts, can be checked, especially by the people, and that's through state Supreme Court elections. However, I strongly disagree with this idea because a 2010 Princeton University study showed that elected Supreme Courts are 3 times more likely to make mistakes or have inconsistent rulings based on their constitution rather than appointed justices.
Okay, I have a question. In his 1969 book, William W. Van Alstyne said that there were 2 modern assumptions regarding Marbury v. Madison. First was the assumption of judicial supremacy, and the second was the idea that the Constitution is what judges say it is. So how would you respond to the argument that the only reason why we have the principle of judicial review is because Marshall in Marbury v. Madison said that it was there?
So in a 1999 Michigan Law Review authored by a Brown University professor, Gordon Wood, he argues that it's a very myopic view to maintain that Chief Justice John Marshall is the one that coined the term of judicial review. Instead, it was the first time that the court asserted its power, but looking back into prior cases and at the origins of judicial review from the British Privy Court, that this doctrine existed far before the 1803 case.
And so I agree with my unit mate Krishna that about judicial review, but I also think that there is a tendency for judicial supremacy and just saying the Constitution is whatever justices say it is. Perhaps the best example of this is the case Griswold v. Connecticut of 1965, in which the court struck down a contraception law because they said that there are penumbras that emanate from the amendments of the Constitution, and because of this, there's a right to privacy from the Fourth Amendment. I think examples like Griswold show that Supreme Court justices do uniquely have the power to say what the Constitution is, whatever they say it is.
Cool, I'll go. So regarding the idea of judicial supremacy, we can see that Supreme Court justices actually have life terms. And on top of that, they're not elected by the people. Do you think this is an issue and can lead to the Supreme Court having too much power, or the justices?
I don't believe that having life tenure for Supreme Court justices is actually an issue. And one of the biggest arguments against having life tenure is that once judges get older and older, or justices get older and older, they are more prone to having mental diseases like dementia or Alzheimer's that may prevent their best ability from deciding these Supreme Court cases. However, I propose that we could put forth a mental health test that psychologists use called the Folstein test, that test for dementia and Alzheimer's, and we do this regularly so that Supreme Court justices can prove that they are still mentally competent enough to decide these cases.
And on your point about whether the fact that the Supreme Court justices aren't elected by the people, Alexander Hamilton actually discusses this issue in Federalist 81 because anti-federalists had the same concerns. However, I agree with Hamilton that it is fine that our justices are elected through or are nominated and appointed through our president and our Senate because those are elected by the people. So while not being directly elected to the Supreme Court, our people do still have a say in the representatives in our government.
I'll go. So veering kind of away, doesn't judicial review leave room for things like judicial activism to take place? And isn't this dangerous for our democracy? And along with that, what do you guys think about, or do you guys agree with judicial activism?
So first off, I would like to propose our definition of judicial activism, which is in line with Professor David A. Strauss from the University of Chicago, in which he argues that judicial activism is overturning laws as unconstitutional, overturning judicial precedent, and ruling against a preferred interpretation of the Constitution. So we can see that what judicial activism is really subjective to who you are.
And I would reject the premise of the second part of the question. I think that oftentimes judicial activism is just a term people use for court cases that they don't agree with or whose outcome they don't agree with. Perhaps a textbook case of this is Roe versus Wade of 1974, in which opponents labeled the creation of or the protection of the right to an abortion as judicial activism.
Jumping off that, Jumping off that point, you mentioned that it's just an excuse for people to reject cases they don't agree with. However, how would you respond to the ever-present fear of political ideology motivating justices' decisions on cases? Do you think that's correct, or do you think that every question is political?
If we have the time to answer.
Do you guys want to answer that question?
Yeah, answer.
I can. So we actually do see this concern of increased hyperpolarization of the court. Justice Sonia Sotomayor has enumerated multiple times in multiple dissents of cases, most notably Trump v. Hawaii of 2018, that she feels that cases are unfairly leaning toward the betterment or the advancement of the Trump administration. And I do think that as our Congress becomes more hyperpolarized, the rest of our government will follow suit.
Thank you. All right, feedback. I'll go first. Sure. So first off, I really like the evidence, especially like the different places that you guys got it from. I think it's important that we pull from many different sources. And I also liked how you guys chose to define pre-clearance and then later judicial activism without just name dropping it. You guys went the extra step and explained what it was, and that was really good. And you guys had relatively equal talking parts, which is important, making sure that all the panel mates talk for the same amount of time. So you guys did 2 to 3, which was really good. One thing that a few things that I thought were like really nitpicky. You guys were talking for a little too long and some of you guys a little too fast. So make sure that your pace is adequate, especially when you're answering questions. Not as much, because your testimony reading was fairly good, but yeah. And then make sure you use the full term. So don't say SCOTUS, say Supreme Court. And unless it's like a really big question, which I don't think Kira's was, try not to have 4 people jump in on the first question. That's usually like a feeler question. And the last thing is, I would have liked if you guys defined judicial review at the beginning of your testimony. Other than that, there was a really nitpicky. Other than that, it was a really good testimony. I really enjoyed it.
I can go next.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I really liked the opening quote, "We may not always see injustice." I think that was a use because we got a lot of quotes in our testimonies, but it was short, it was snappy. Anthony Kennedy, I liked it a lot. I like the fact that you went back to the colonial era and you talked about the history of judicial review. I think that it would have been better if you had shed a little more background on this specific case of Marbury v. Madison as well, because there were a lot of political biases in that case that led Marshall to make that ruling and to assume that power. So I think if you could have mentioned that and maybe connected it to the modern era and our fears about the modern Supreme Court better, I think that would have, added another layer of nuance. I liked your pulling of evidence from very, very different sources. And I really love the fact that you were prepared for every direction that Q&A could possibly go in. At one point, we were talking about the tenure of Supreme Court justices, and someone, I think it was Gloria, mentioned the idea of having routine testing, for Alzheimer's and other mental health issues. And I thought that was just an amazing piece of evidence to bring in. I agree that you were going a little too fast, so it might have been nice to slow down. But otherwise, I thought testimony and Q&A were pretty good.
All right, I can go next. Echoing what my other two judges have said, you guys did a really good job. I really appreciated the clear signposting in the testimony. As a Unit 4 member, I don't do a lot with judicial review, so it was really good for me to be able to follow along very clearly, and that's going to happen with a lot of your judges because they're not going to know a lot about what you're talking about, so it's really important to be very clear. You guys had great evidence. I really appreciated your signposting in regards to the court cases you were bringing in. You gave a really good synopsis of them and then also included why they were important as well as the year. I would have loved to see a specific opinion cited in a court case. That would have added that layer of depth, but I did really like how you did things. And then, yeah, I think your hot seat was really good as well. Great evidence, really good analysis. Audrey, I really liked your point about judges basically being elected because, you know, they're confirmed by the Senate who we elect. And then the only time that I thought you guys were going on too long was on my question because everybody talked and it took a couple minutes to get through that question. But all the judges were able to ask a question, so it worked out in the end. So good job, everybody.
Yeah, I'm just going to second everything that everyone's already said. I thought you guys did have a really good distribution of answering, and answers were kind of dragged out at some points, but besides that, you did make sure to answer all the parts of a question if it were asked in separate parts. And then I agree with Rama. I really liked the mention of the Fulstein test for the question of life tenure. I think I would have liked something, because I agree. I think judicial activism as a concept is bull, but it would have been nice to kind of go into why some people think that it's not a very good thing from the Supreme Court. But besides that, I really liked your testimony. Good evidence. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. That was really great from everybody involved. I want to point out to everybody who's watching that, you know, this was a testimony that these students wrote just for this presentation. They didn't know what questions were coming in the Q&A. They just put it together. And this is essentially a Unit 3 question. This is exactly the type of question that you might get in Unit 3. But you will note that, I guess, is it only Gloria who's Unit 3?
Yes. And then Jennifer.
Oh, and Jennifer. That's right. Okay. But Jennifer was judging. So, yeah. So that demonstrates something that I think really great schools do, where they pay attention to the other units. Like good schools might have 1 unit or 2 units that are pretty strong, but they don't talk to the other units. So, or they don't listen, more importantly, to the other units, because at the higher levels of competition, at the state competition, you will be in Unit 5 or Unit 6 and get asked a Unit 1 or Unit 2 question. That will happen. I guarantee it. And you have to be able to answer it. So that's really great. Does anybody have any questions or comments for these alumni volunteers? Or let me ask the alumni volunteers, what was the thing that was hardest for you in We the People, and what do you think maybe you could have done differently, or you wish you had done differently?
And the hardest thing was keeping our answers concise, especially during Q&A, because we would have so many ideas that we all wanted to put forward, but it might have been smarter for us to instead have one person bring in the idea and then the second person come in with evidence and build off of each other. So I wish we had done that a little more. Yeah.
And kind of related to that, for me, I think really listening closely to what the judges are asking for, because sometimes some judges do a lot of exposition and the questions at the end, and some judges don't really pose a clear question. So you have to really focus on what they're saying, and it's hard because you just you're stressed and you're oh my god, I have to answer this question, I have to answer it perfectly, do I have evidence for whatever they're asking? And you realize you've zoned out for the entire question, you have no idea what they're talking about.
I think this is oh, sorry, no, you can go.
I think this became much easier once we started getting our testimonies down, because that just made our Q&A so much easier once we knew what we were talking about. And at first, we just talked about sort of everything, and then after a while we'd have a thesis and a good theme, and then that would make our testimony better, and then that would also focus our Q&A. So just getting testimony down to a place where we really like it is really important.
Yeah, I agree with Ayush. I think in the steps that it takes before you compete or show your testimony to judges, what our unit originally did was we would kind of come together, talk about what we already knew, and then as we were writing our first draft of testimony, start doing research. But I think what would have worked better for us is if we researched our individual opinions, talked about it, and then wrote testimony, so it was a little bit more cohesive and people were more on the right track earlier in the way. So yeah.
Also, I think you need to get very comfortable with the idea that you're going to be rewriting your testimony a lot. For us in the beginning, sometimes we'd hold on to our testimony. We'd because it was a comfortable format. But after a while, after you hear the same feedback again and again, you really have to respond to that. Otherwise, you're not going to get any better. And listening to that feedback, listening to your fellow teammates to ensure that you are on the right track, that can sometimes be very difficult because you can fall into a rut at times.
Yeah, and also adding on to the fact that you should be open to changing your testimony, you should also be okay with the idea that your opinion might change, and you're gonna have to maybe you won't necessarily be able to show it depending on when in time and when the competition is that your opinion changes, but you should definitely be open to other ideas and being able to talk about that with your teammates and how you guys will bring up different opinions within your presentation.
And I think it's really important at the beginning, you're going to be very overwhelmed, especially when you first get into units. I know Audrey and Vi can agree with me that we have several screening sessions the first week we got put into units, just because there's so much information. And what kind of happened to me was that as I started to learn information, that was the only information I wanted to use in Q&A, even if it didn't fit the question, because that was something that I knew. And I think it's really important just to understand that at the beginning, there's going to be a lot of things that you don't know and you don't know how to respond to, and that's okay. Because at the end, you're going to be able to respond to a lot more things, you're going to know a lot more stuff, but don't just become so pigeonholed in on what you know, because you don't know anything yet. So don't fixate on that.
And I guess the last thing, sorry, I'm doing this for a second here, but I guess the last thing is just time management. You're going to be overwhelmed with a lot of things this year. There's going to be college apps, and then there's going to be Comm Civics on top of that, and any other extracurriculars you have going on. It's going to be very difficult. So I think that getting a head start and actually sitting down and trying to learn will be more beneficial to you in the beginning than it will be cramming the night before, districts or what have you. Not that you won't be doing that as well, but I just think time management is pretty key, and it's something I sorely lacked. So.
What was your favorite part of the experience?
I think competing for sure is so much fun. You prepare so much for states, for example. We were all really stressed going in, and then once competition actually started, once we were in the room and the rest of our team was watching us, the fear kind of went away a little bit. It was still nerve-wracking, but it was there's a thrill that comes with actually competing and then using all the things that you've learned, finally showing off to judges what you know. So that was a super fun experience for us.
I feel looking back, that stretch from January, the end of winter break to states, when you don't know whether you're gonna make it, and you're super stressed out, everyone's yelling at you, and you're just really bad, but then you get really good all of a sudden. That, looking back, that part was really, really impactful.
And then just sorry, go ahead.
I think it's just that we the people such a unique experience that only you and your class and a few other people truly understand, and that makes you all so close. At Foothill, we were all made fun of all the time for being a cult, and you just become such good friends with your unit, such good friends with your class. You become really connected with your teachers, and that's just so special. And when you look back on high school, you realize that was the only time that we really felt like that, and that's just truly so special, and makes us all just want to constantly relive our We the People experience.
Yeah.
And then the moments when you're not doing testimony or doing Q&A, like the BART rides back from CACE sessions, like going out to eat with your sister units and getting to know your units better, that's so much fun because like there's really not that many people you can talk about constitutional law with. And then these people are also like passionate about the weirdest niche interests. And it's just nice to have friends that you can really talk about weird things with.
Yeah, I'm going off that. I had so much fun with my unit because the thing is that I had Ayush, and Ayush was very liberal. He is very liberal. And because of that, I didn't even know what ideology I had, but because he was so liberal and our other unit member, Ethan, who was kind of libertarian, I would sometimes take the very conservative position just to poke him and just to rile him up. And I think those arguments and those bonding experiences with your units are very fun. Because at one point he actually started yelling at me, and I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm sure Kira and Audrey would agree, but basically I would have never talked to the people in my unit if it not for We the People. But now they spam me with TikToks and bug me almost every day. And so, I mean, the We the People experience for me was very fun because I was on one side, I leaned more right, whereas the rest of my unit leaned quite a bit left. And so they would argue with me all the time, but it was overall a very informative and life-changing experience. And I would not, if I had a second chance, I would do it again for sure.
I was on that panel.
Go, Megan.
But I want to butt in that it's like, along with what everyone's saying, it's just like the knowledge that you get. Like when you first get that knowledge, you're gonna, like when you first like see all the things that you need to learn, you're gonna be overwhelmed, but then you learn it. And then you have so much power. Like you talk in so, like you will be talking to your unit mates, like walking down that school hall. I guess it's remote now, but you'll be talking to people and people are going to be like, what the hell are you guys talking about? And you're just like, oh, you won't understand. This is like a We the People thing. Like, this is my knowledge. And then eventually when you become an alum, you're going to be talking to Clint on Twitter using We the People terms and using cases. And he's going to respond to you in memes. And that is just amazing.
I can't promise memes, but you know, thank you. So that's great. I really appreciate that. I know. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to take a break. We're going to take like a 10-minute break, and then we're going to come back and maybe chat for a bit, and then we're going to split up into smaller groups. Hopefully, in those smaller groups, we can continue the conversations that we've been having so far. And it's really an opportunity for everybody, for the students here, to make use of the alumni that are here. Oh, Michael's here. Yes, there he is. So feel free to ask questions, and you know, we're going to be asking about like what you're afraid of, what you might have some apprehension about, what you might be really excited about, and what any questions that you might have. Okay, so let's take a break. It's 11 o'clock now. We'll be back at 11:10, and then we'll chat for a bit, and then we'll break up into some smaller groups. Okay. So Amy is going to split us up shortly. We're going to be like just shot into little breakout rooms, and then everybody comes back at about 11:35, something like that. Back. Are we all back? We're mostly back. Great. Okay, so we're mostly back. So this is going to be the really fun part. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be splitting everybody up at random into, I think, about 15 different units. And then in those units, you're going to be mixed up with whoever's there, whoever is our students who are there. That's your unit, and you're going to be writing a testimony, just like you saw the alumni panel do earlier, on the question of what is the most important right in the Bill of Rights. People need to look and see which rights are in the Bill of Rights. You should do that. Now, it's important to note and to highlight this. The question is, what is the most important right in the Bill of Rights? It is not, what is the most important amendment in the Bill of Rights? So, in other words, if you are asked, what is the most important right in the Bill of Rights, and you answer the First Amendment, that might not be the most responsive answer. So I would encourage everybody to think about the individual rights that are listed and not on an amendment basis. There will be at least one CACE volunteer in the room with you. Some of them are going to be alums, some of them are going to be us. We are there as just basically a way to help you out. Like if you have questions as to how to answer this, where to start, that's what we will be there for. And we're going to be giving you about, let me look at the schedule. I think it's, where is it? We're going to be giving you about a half hour in order to do all of this. That's writing a testimony for it's about 2 to 3 minute testimony. It's a half hour. Now, when you first get in to your groups, you should talk amongst yourselves and be like, well, okay, what about this right? What about that right? And you have to justify it. The question is, what is the most important right in the Bill of Rights and why? And so one thing you might want to do is talk about how the other rights might not be as important. That might be something that you could hit, might not. You might not have time. You should start basically a Google doc so you guys can write it out and just start writing it out among you. And then at the end of the half hour or so, you're going to present that, and then the volunteers that are there in your room are going to judge you. They're going to ask you questions, ask you follow-up questions, and kind of, I would encourage you once again to pay attention to participation, pay attention to responsiveness, and all of that. And that is pretty much what is going to happen. Does anybody have any questions? This is the first time we've ever done this via Zoom. Obviously, this is like the first time we've done this, all of these sessions. So it's a pretty big undertaking. I do want to say thanks to Amy Kushner, who is a CACE board member, who is being our Zoom coordinator, and that's actually a very big and annoying task. What we had done previously is we would get everybody into a room and then split people up. That was great, but it didn't allow us the opportunity to work with as many schools, and there were people who couldn't make it. And so this is in a lot of ways better because it's just more available for everybody to do. So yeah. But it does take a little bit of time in order to set up all of these breakout rooms. So they're being set up now. In the meantime, I know that we've talked about this a couple of times, and we talked about it at both of our previous sessions, that we do have a student Slack that hopefully everybody here is in. If you're not in it, let us know. I think everybody here seems like is our Amador and Foothill kids, although there might be some other kids. That's fine. Also, if you're an alum and you want into the Slack, that's fine. Just reach out to me and we'll put you into it. But unless you left it, you know, I don't know, you might have left it. It's up to you.
I just wanted to add, as we go through the presentations going forward, it's very fast. You do not have a lot of time. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't even have to be accurate. We are not going to judge you on the same basis that we hold our alum who had a whole year of amassing resources and understanding what's going on. Today is just about putting yourself out there, getting it done, and us giving you some feedback for things that we're going to be looking for in the future as you go through this program. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there and speak up.
That's right.
And I would suggest getting to your right quickly. Don't debate too hard on which one is the most important right, because then you'll run out of time to write your testimony.
Although, you know, if you just cannot agree, then that's okay too. You just have to write your testimony that way. And then at the end, you're going to have an opportunity to vote. We're going to do another one of those polls. I think because we're only going to be doing one unit, one testimony, we probably are going to be able to end a little bit early, which is great. But in case that this is the last time that, you know, we see you until competitions, you know, I would once again encourage everybody to make use of the student Slack, make use of CACE in general. We will have some sort of practice type thing that we will do in advance of the district and regional competition, as well as the state competition. So we'll be there for you. And I do want to point out, and Graham, who has the belt?
We do, yes, we do. It's in my classroom at the moment.
Okay.
I keep meaning to. I wanted to get it here so I could have it over my shoulder during this Zoom, but unfortunately, I was not on the ball in that respect.
Right. So 2 years ago, we introduced the CACE belt. It is a championship belt. It looks really fucking cool. I will say that. And it is for whoever wins the regional competition in Northern California. Who has won the regional competition in Northern California the last 2 years, Graham?
That would be Foothill High.
I hope everybody had a good time. Everybody participated, right? That's good. I know that it felt like there wasn't enough time to do it, but that's part of the reason why we keep that time short, because we want you to, we know how much you want to go on and demonstrate how smart you are and how much work you've done up until this point. But we also, you know, folks who've gone through We the People are going to tell you there's never enough time to finish. There's never enough time to be perfect. And so at some point you have to put a little pressure on you to get things done quickly. It seems like, based on what I can tell, everybody had a good time. I know we had a good time in my group. I think we're all mostly back. We're getting close to mostly back. Okay, so I think we got a couple of different answers, or a few different answers. There's always like 2 or 3 rights that are like the rights that everybody picks. We've been asking this question for a long time, but we've never done it really quite like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a poll again. Hopefully it'll work. I think it will. We listed a bunch of rights. And so you get to pick as to what is the most important right. So Amy, whenever you're ready and you want to throw up the poll, go ahead. Now, you don't have to vote as to what your unit did, but you can if you want.
Can we vote for more than one?
I don't think so. I don't know.
No, it's letting me vote for one.
Yeah.
Like I have.
We are allowed to vote for more than one. Everyone
wow.
vote for all of them. Tie.
No, don't vote for all of them. Vote for no more than 3, I guess. I don't know. Do what you want.
I'll note in our room, so I see free speech is getting a lot of action here. In our room, there was a debate between free speech versus the right to petition the government, and which, you know, going hand in hand, but which one of those was the most important between the two. So I thought that was interesting.
We got, in our room, it was free speech versus Fourth Amendment. freedom from warrantless search.
Right. So in our room, we also had right to trial by jury and due process as the main four that were debated. But within the speech rights, or within the First Amendment rights, two of them were debated hotly, which I thought was kind of cool.
I also see a lot of people picking the Ninth Amendment, which I like to see. The Ninth Amendment is a really, really interesting amendment, right? Like that's where we get right to privacy, those penumbral rights.
Clint, why didn't you include the Third Amendment on your poll?
That's a good question. Yeah. You know, it's a little bit different. There was like a Third Amendment issue in quarantine, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was just a case that came up not that long ago. I can't remember what it was about, though.
I think it was a state was letting soldiers stay in a hotel room, and they had paid for it, and then the state wanted to retract the permission to have the soldiers stay in the hotel. But it was mostly just a contracts issue, but they just threw in the Third Amendment because it's fun.
It's in DC.
Yeah, I think
not being the legal justification for their argument, just to clarify.
I think we used to like ask people what was the least important right in the Bill of Rights, and like everybody picked the Third Amendment, so we stopped asking.
Like we're nearly done. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Nice work, everybody. Free speech. So I think that worked out really well. So what does anybody have any thoughts, any questions at this point? Let's see. Nothing in the chat, but you should know where to find us. You can, if you're in the Slack, but we also have an Instagram, it's CACEstagram. We also have Twitter, if you use Twitter, which I don't necessarily recommend. And then we have a Facebook page, which I definitely don't recommend using Facebook, but you can use that if you want. We are going to have a testimony writing workshop. You guys all got some opportunities to write a testimony today, a short testimony, but we are going to do a testimony writing workshop in, I think, November, probably, after you guys are set into units. We'll talk to your teachers to see when units are going to be set, and then we can, actually sit down with you and help you write your testimonies, or give you the tools that you're going to need in order to write the testimonies. And then, like I said, sometime after that, we're going to be running practices. They'll be virtual, of course, but they'll be something similar to what we've done so far. And then we'll have the regional competition, and I am one of the coordinators of the regional competition, and I forget what day it is. I think it's the Graham or Stacy. Do you remember what we decided it was going to be? Is it the 6th? I think it's the 6th of December.
That sounds right, because I think remembering it was going to be a Sunday.
Yeah, that's right. So that is when the case belt will be decided, and then I believe that everybody is going to be participating in the state competition, which is in early February, which is exciting.
She didn't move it to late January. I thought somehow it had moved.
I'll check on that. I mean, time doesn't matter anymore, so it's just sort of whenever it works. Okay. Well, great job, everybody. And I'd really like to thank and highlight all of the alums that came back. I see a lot of alums that came back to help you out. This is exactly the type of civic participation, they get civic virtue points for doing this. When you go through this program, some people call it a cult, whatever, that's fine. I actually don't think that that's a bad description in some ways, but what we want you to take from, one of the things that we want you to take from this program is a desire to give back. And you can give back in a lot of different ways, and you should be giving back to your communities as well at large, but giving back to the program is important as well. So they have done that today because they care about it, because they had a lot of fun doing it, and we hope that next year when we are in the same position, that a lot of you will do the same. Okay? So thanks very much. We hope you have a great semester, and we'll talk to you soon.